Hey guys, welcome to Freestyle Friday. Um, Super excited about playing some more Legacy today on the channel. I've got this user submitted Jeskai Dreadnought deck in front of me. Members of my MetaFi page can submit these decks, and when I find time in my schedule, I'll happily play them. And today's no different. So let's see here. Phyrexian Dreadnought has been around forever. It's a card that you need to cheat into play. Back in the day, we used to use cards like, what was that card's name? Something Mask, Illusionary Mask. And these days, however, we need to use Stifle effects, as I call them. So for this particular version, we're playing Doorkeeper Thrall. That is also a card that enables Null Drifter for a little bit more redundancy when it comes to payoff. And we're using Dress Down. So obviously, these two cards have different applications, like shutting off opponent ETBs, One Rings, etc. Dress Down, turning off creature's ability, that could be against like Sneak and Show or, I don't know, construct tokens out of Urza Saga. So you kind of need to make sure that this column of Stifles, I used to play Stifle and Consign in these slots, right? And those were good when Eldrazi was all over the shop. So now we are switching that up in order to accommodate the metagame. That's kind of one of the two things you need to make sure is true when you're playing Dreadnought is that your Stifle effects are hitting the metagame and your Dreadnought is surviving. So let's say the meta is, a ton of, Fatal Push decks and Plow decks and no Lightning Bolt decks, no combo decks at all. Probably not the best time to play it. So if Dreadnought can survive and we can hit with our Stifles, we should be in good spot. 3 counter magic on Wasteland for the generic stuff. Plows, of course, also counts in that department. 4 Tamios. We're kind of hoping that if this sticks, it's awesome. If it dies, that means there's high likelihood our Thrall or Dreadnought sticks, so that's kind of the logic there. We do play a Red Splash for 2 reasons. One reason is Prismatic Ending for 3, which could be relevant against a ton of permanents. And the other reason is having a couple of Pyroblasts. We can only play 1 Volcanic Island, or at least this pilot decided that was the case. I think if I was playing the deck, I would probably play a second Volcanic instead of an island and highly consider one of these deltas to be a white fetch to go get basic planes, but, very minor. I'm not going to change anything. I'm going to play it as submitted. Sideboard-wise, aside from the blasts, we have some consigned memories, still some concession to Eldrazi variants, Mystic Forge, stuff like that. Our Graveyard Hate is focusing a lot on having cards that let us keep a hand on the draw against Oops All spells, especially because our deck has Doorkeeper Thrall, so that means Baron Macabre is good against that deck, despite them having the ability to reshuffle and hardcast Oracle. Then we have time to develop a Doorkeeper Thrall. A couple more endings, kills Chalice, kills 1-drops, Curie, Beanstalk, stuff like that. A bit more guarding against various combo decks like Sneak and Doomsday. And then a single Haymaker here with Triumph of St. Catherine, which will especially come in handy against decks like Red Days decks, etc. So with all of that being said, let's jump into some games and see how it goes. All right, match 1 is upon us here. I'm on the draw playing Jeskai Dreadnought, submitted by an anonymous Baron. This end is quite awesome. We cover a lot of angles between Wasteland, Force, and Plow, and we have lands to play the game. So let's try and get things started here. Trop, pass. Okay, so I'm thinking some control deck, which is probably not ideal. If I expose my only Volcanic here and I lose it, I can't ending for 3, but that's the only downside. So let's do that. Second Plow, probably not the best here. Am I willing to draw Doorkeeper Thrall and an additional land? I actually think no. I'm going to shuffle these. Let's see if that pays off. Could have Wastelanded turn 1. But let's see if the opponent's mana base is actually weak or they're just going to cycle a Lore and Reveal and, they don't care. Me shuffling that Ponder is not exactly a sign of strength. Let's see. Opponent says they have to be away for a couple of minutes, so let me pause the video. All right, we're back here. Opponent decides to brainstorm on end step. So obviously that was part of what could happen here. when thinking about the wasteland. Let's see how the opponent does from here. Here's a fetch. My opponent plays a beanstalk. I'm going to force it, pitching dress down. Here's up the beanstalk. So I'll try and fight here. And then hopefully this happens. Oh, wow. I get dazed. That's very bad for me. Now I'm in trouble. So the opponent dazed back the land that they obviously care the most about. That's how you should play at the very least. But I'm still going to try and wasteland them here. I think that's my best shot. So now I need to find like a Dreadnought. The problem is I'm so far away from doing anything meaningful here. There's a Dreadnought, so I'm obviously going to end step my dress down and try and play the Dreadnought. The odds of that card surviving are just very bad. Dream scenario is I find another Dreadnought off the cycle and draw step. So this deck will have, ooh, looks like well, maybe my opponent's just playing very well here and playing around second wasteland like a G, or they got a bit sloppy. So let's hope for the latter. Here is fetch for Tundra, cast dress down. Problem is everything is killing this Dreadnought here. Push, cut, force. Obviously drawing 2 plows here didn't help me. How do I get back into this game? It's probably something to do with Null Drifter. But I don't know if that was a reason that I should, you know, slow roll the dress down to give me more time to find the Null Drifter and the third land. The thing is with Beanstalk in play, you can kind of force a will some... Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this game is probably over. I'm gonna give it a go here. Well, let's see. If my opponent can keep playing the game, I'll move on to the next one. If my opponent is stuck here on blue-black, then, you know, we can keep it up. Bowmaster is a card. Here's a land. So even if my opponent goes like Murktide, they draw a card even though I plow it. I'm just slowly getting grinded down here. Here's another Beanstalk. That's the dream for that deck, when you're casting Beanstalks without being under any pressure. Opponent plays well around days, plays the important spell first, then the ponder they don't care about. I keep the card. I draw Tamiyo with no way to protect it. I don't think I'm supposed to slow roll it. I think I'm supposed to play it and hope my opponent has a, you know, bad hand. Okay, up the Beanstalk. That's a very typical league deck to run into. I don't think that's what this deck wants to see. You want to see some combo decks. You want to see some tempo mirrors. You want to see some ancient tomb decks. But bigger blue decks, not good. Opponent with the shuffle here, 6 cards in hand. And I can guarantee you, my opponent's 6 cards are better than my 5 cards. Okay, so it looks like we magically dodged a removal spell. But my opponent will probably have a Bowmaster, which I'll happily plow and move on with life. I drew a blue card there. I actually thought I had a chance. Oh, wait a minute. No, this was the right play. But I could have thralled here. Okay, I'm getting plowed. Okay, or forced, rather. Okay, we can move on here. Okay, getting completely destroyed by good old Beanstalk. So that is not a card we can let our opponent have. Let's see. Maybe we can cut a plow and the dazes for these cards. That should be quite nice. This is a matchup where I want Triumph. It dodges Fatal Push, which is kind of nice. I think it only dies to the 2 Murderous Cuts. So maybe that's a card I want. And Am I cutting a land here? Because I don't think my opponent will put my mana base under that much pressure. I'll try that. I'll try and cut a land here. I don't love the forces, but I actually think forcing Beanstalk is quite strong. Okay, this hand is fine. We get to have some more looks with Ponder here. We already have a Thrall. Let's shuffle 3 lands. The Thrall is a card that gives our deck potential to draw Dreadnought. Let's see, is this Carpet? That would be very annoying if the opponent had turn on Carpet here. Okay, that's a card we have to kill with Prismatic Ending. So then, what's my play? Since I'm up against the Daze deck, I probably have to respect that. So I go like this. And then I ponder afterwards. I think I ponder off a Tundra because I have a 3rd fetch to go get Volcanic later. I don't think these cards are any good. So you can argue the Force is fine because then I can Force Pitch Force and use the Ponder to keep digging. Is that good enough? Then I have to draw Plow afterwards. I think that's quite bad. Let me shuffle these. Throw into a Dreadnought. That's decent. So now I have some kind of a plan if I can stick this Thrall. I'm going to fight over Beanstalk on the stack here and, you know, get crushed by Daze. Okay. My opponent did not have Daze, so I think that's why I should try and play a Dreadnought here. So at this point, I don't expect my Dreadnought to survive, and then hopefully, with me having 4 Null Drifters in my deck, I have some good draws, and I can overwhelm my opponent that way. Tamiyo is also a solid card, because it kind of has to get removed unless my opponent can match it when it comes to card advantage, which they sure could in the previous game. Yeah, Dreadnought against the Pile of Spot removal is just not amazing. Then I really have to get into grind gear with Tamiyo and Null Drifter. And there isn't a ton of stuff you can do to stop it, right? This strategy is hoping that, you know, the Thrall is good, Dress Down is good. And when that's not really the case, they're more like liabilities or extremely mediocre cards, then we're in trouble. At the very least, we got to keep Beanstalk off the table because that was just what buried us last game. When it was 6 cards, it's like unthinkable they don't have a removal spell for the Dreadnought. So it's kind of up to my deck how I can proceed from here. Let's see if that's the case. They play around Daze. Null Drifter would be amazing. Opponent shuffles, plays a land. That's not a Null Drifter. I think we should keep our opponent guessing when it comes to Pyroblast and Plow. So just tapping like this is decent. Here comes a little bit of surveilling. The worth noting is if my opponent plays Uro, that card stays in play. Okay, so I still have the chance to spike some good cards. My opponent's hand is weird, so let's see what's in that hand. Just a ton of lands? Maybe? I think I should crack this clue when Bowmaster is not a factor. Could get iffy if my opponent has like Force or Daze and start taking some damage. Worth noting is the ETB on Bowmaster is currently shut down by Doorkeeper Thrall. Guess this is okay. Yeah. Okay, so my opponent is drawing infinite cards, but they're not handling the board currently. Now they days check me, so that means if they find like Murderous Cut or Push, they're just gonna go for it. So I'm not quite keeping up here when it comes to cards, but I am doing a decent job. So let's see. I assume my Tamio is gonna get shot here. Okay. That's very annoying. Yeah. That was kind of the story of this game. I drew too many plows playing against the control deck, but I had to keep certain number. That's part of why that deck is viable, right? That your opponent doesn't know if they need removal spell or not. Like, you want to see the first removal spell in the mid game, but drawing 2 is just embarrassing here early on. So how I did trim 1, yeah, I trimmed 1. Obviously could have trimmed another, but if that deck plays many Bowmasters, that would be annoying for my deck. It's just rough to play against control, and I didn't have any, draws to make up for it, if that makes sense. The opponent found a lot of, like, the Beanstalk is what makes it uneven in a longer game. And they managed to find 2 copies early both games. So sometimes that's just how it goes when it comes to, your pairings and how the cards line up against each other. With that being said, you should still focus on playing well. You can build some good habits, you can get away with winning games you're not supposed to win, etc. So now we're in the mode where every, Murktide, Murderous Cut, whatever, Force of Will the opponent's casting, it's just spiraling more and more advantage. So I'm going to get buried here eventually. It's not going to be that much longer before I can see this one. Fatal Push on top of the deck. Cameo getting killed. Oh, okay. Maybe next time. Oh, okay, so now it's a... That's cool. So now it's a bargain into that push, and now my Tamio gets killed. But funnily enough, my opponent let me untap for Pyroblast in this spot. But maybe they just don't care. That card is dead. So let's cycle this stress down, I guess. Let's see if we can get lucky. Okay, I think I've seen enough good games. Let's try and win the next one. Okay, round 2. I'm playing Jeskai Dreadnought. And things are not exactly going according to plan. So the good thing about this hand is I kind of know what I'm looking for. I'm looking for either white mana plus Thrall, Rest Down, stuff like that. Being on the play with a cantrip is always, it's interesting because let's say I don't know what I'm looking for, and then I see some polarized cards like Double Plow. How am I supposed to know if those cards are good against my opponent here? It's kind of an underrated topic to talk about, because you don't always play like, you don't always have a plan yourself. Sometimes you need to react with your ponder, and you need to, you'll see cards like Double Force of Will or Double Plow, and then you can be in trouble, because that decision is going to be hard. I'm so sad this card is not blue. It would have been very awesome if it was blue. I actually think the blue count is a bit irresponsible in this deck. It's all the way down to 20. With that being said, how do I like these cards? Looks like these cards are fine. So now I'm kind of guarded against combo. I have interaction against creature, and then I have Brainstorm and Ponder to keep digging, so all in all, this was not the most high variance ponder because I have the other cantrips to kind of fix my hand later if my quote unquote gamble on the ponder ends up being bad. Let's see what we're up against. Scalding Tarn Pass. All right, all right. Didn't get to learn much from that. My next card is Phyrexian Dreadnought. Do I believe that card is good? Probably do. Let's cast this before making a choice on the land drop. I will say there's a very high chance I go plains here, but let's see. I'm not scared to cast a draw 2 next turn. Right now it's all about figuring out what I'm up against and then figuring out if I'm supposed to build some answers for my opponent's deck or I'm supposed to advance my own deck. I will say this is probably more of a tempo deck where if you're not advancing your own plan, then in general, you're not, winning the game against the average opponent. You really need to play against a confirmed combo deck for that not to be true. Ponder on the stack, opponent in the tank. Let's see. All right. Do I like these cards? I think I do. So I have my land up for next turn. I can go like this, I feel like. Dreadnought, land, Null Drifter. Maybe I should have just drawn the land there. Mainly because if I get Thoughtseize, there's no reason to show my opponent I have double Null Drifter. So maybe if I only have one, I can get them to take that. Then I can redraw and keep my plow. But if they see 2, they might take the plow. Yeah, I should have drawn Tundra there and had a Null Drifter on top of my deck. I think that would be better. Let's see if this Wasteland is going to be good later on. Now let's see what we're up against. Sneak, Control, Delver. There's a lot of options here. I can see a Curie on the stack now. Curie bobbled turn. My opponent plays Curie. I'm going to force it. They're not. Okay, so maybe another control matchup, which is super funny. So do I reveal the Wasteland or do I not? The upside of revealing the Wasteland is I can double waste next turn if I find another one. But they will know about it, I guess. I think with that being said, I'm gonna evoke a Null Drifter here. That's probably a pretty solid card against what my opponent has going on there. We'll draw 2 on the stack here. It's funny how these control decks, like the Beanstalk deck, now I'm just assuming my opponent's a Jeskai deck, of course, but those kind of decks are very popular just in general amongst legacy players, right? So I think those are some decks you'll see more often in leagues and like your local tournaments. And then if you're trying to win a challenge or, qualify for a showcase, etc., those decks don't see a ton of play. It's pretty interesting. You should, in theory, have more versions of your deck depending on which field you're playing into. So Dreadnought and land. Not anything to write home about, but certainly cards that could help me later. All right, let's see. End step Brainstorm. We didn't learn anything yet. Could still just die to show and tell. Here's Thundering Falls, so Sneak and Show certainly in the realm of possibilities here. My only counterplay is Force Pitch, and then I have some embarrassing Divination to follow up, so not ideal. Here's Show and Tell. I can't let that happen. So if my opponent forces back, pitching Atraxa, feel like I'm supposed to put Null Drifter into play, but this is very unlikely to matter. Here's Atraxa. So against this deck, our Thralls and Dress Downs could potentially do something on top of me having a ton of blasts in my sideboard. So I don't think this is bad. Okay, the opponent only finds 3 cards here, but they can protect. Okay, so I should probably play like this. Play the Thrall, make my opponent worry about, I don't know, double Dreadnought maybe. They don't worry about double Dreadnought. So maybe this is where I go Correction Dreadnought. And then I try and plow the Atraxa afterwards. Is this, let's see, is Dreadnought even winning the race here? Unclear. At least I'm giving my opponent a little bit of a sweat here. Okay, so that one gets countered, and I get to plow that Atraxa. And I get to Null Drifter one of their lands. I have a Wasteland in the back pocket, so there's a chance here. There's a chance I'm actually prisoning out my opponent thanks to the sequencing this turn of Thrall Dreadnought getting forced, Plow resolving. But let's see. The opponent could easily have a second payoff spell here. Sneak attack, go. That is scary. Let's see. Do they find another Atraxa last? Wait a minute. Wait. Let's see. The opponent took... Okay, the opponent could be in trouble here. Let's see if we can keep the hits coming off this Ponder. Because they took Force Will, Ponder, Ancient Tomb off of Atraxa. It was quite a poor hit. So let's think. I really want to find a permanent so I don't die to Emrakul. Let's see. If I wasteland my opponent, I have 6 permanents. So if I have the Thrall, I can actually survive an Emrakul hit. So let's attack. I assume my opponent's sacrificing Ancient Tomb. And then I'm wastelanding one of the other lands. I will get hit for 15 by Emrakul, flash in Thrall, lose everything except the Null Drifter. And then I'll try and win from there. This would be an epic win. Let's see if we can do it. The dream scenario is my opponent has to ponder into the threat. Then I get one more turn of Null Drifting, hopefully at least. Wasteland. Pass. Was it a mistake to not play? No, I actually think this is fine. I'll stand back the Thrall. Okay, opponent. Okay, so far so good. I'm giving myself a chance here, which is quite epic. So now I'm sacrificing everything accept the Null Drifter. Taking 15. Drawing a land, drawing a force. I keep attacking with this Null Drifter. My opponent will ponder here. So if my opponent finds a creature here, I'm dead. But if they don't, I have a chance, which is kind of cool. Opponent shuffles their library. So I have a chance. Obviously, they're going to sacrifice a land here. They go to 7. I'm just going to play out the land, even though I know with my top card it doesn't matter. Now, this was a cool game. I gave myself a good chance here. Sandbagging the 6th permanent, wastelanding plus getting to attack. Oh, wow. Is my opponent gonna... No. They would have just killed me if they had a creature, right? Yeah, they would have just killed me if they had a creature. Because I'm on 3 life, so I don't have to worry about anything. Yeah, it's quite... I mean, the opponent needs to sacrifice... Maybe they're just locked out of the game now. Yeah, I think they're locked out of the game. Unless, I guess, they're sandbagging like a spirit guide. That is, of course, a possibility. Let's see. Let's see. Wow, that was cool. That was very cool. Null Drifter getting the job done versus Atraxa and Emrakul. You love to see that. So these 6 cards are amazing. That card is atrocious. That card is atrocious. Now we look at the rest. So I like all of these other cards. Question is this a matchup where cutting a Dreadnought is reasonable? Probably I should cut like a Wasteland here, I feel like. Yeah, let's cut a Wasteland. I think it's okay to cut a land from this deck when my mana's not under pressure. And I think on the draw, I care slightly more about developing my own stuff than wastelanding my opponent, though that might be bad logic. Do I want to draw 2 wastelands? I don't know. I think this is fine. And then if my opponent like fetches a ton of duels this game and shows they don't really care about wasteland, then I'll have the 4th one for game 3. Pretty cool that the Thrall stops Atraxa. Okay, I have double force. No red mana, but I can get there. No pressure, but I don't think you should worry about that too much, because you'll draw a creature eventually, and they don't really do a good job of dealing with creatures, so. When I'm playing out Petal turn 1, what does that tell us? Probably not a lot. Dreadnought is not a good draw. Do I believe I need to double force next turn? I can see that, so maybe let's just pass here and not bring any variance upon ourselves here with, you know, pondering into no blue card and then getting overwhelmed by show and tell Force of Will. So maybe playing around the nuts here is solid. Even though with show and tell, payoff, Force of Will, blue card, and a land, that's 5 cards. So maybe that was a little bit over careful here. Because it's actually off a mulligan. It's actually not possible for the opponent to get there unless they have the absolute nuts. If they have it, 1 more card. I like my play, but I think this was too careful. Okay, here's Wasteland. Probably just a card I should fire off. So let's think about this. So the good part is I can like stall my opponent here. They're on a mulligan. They're looking to resolve 3s and 4s. But actually, when I have a double force, I'm actually interested in that exchange, right? But maybe it's just good to prevent your opponent from playing Magic, and then you have more wiggle room to, you know, cast your cantrip, etc., etc. Yes, that is reasonable. They brainstorm to kind of try and keep the lands coming. So I guess I'm just on the same plan now, right? Maybe I should just keep passing the turn here. I don't think there's any reason to lose to the nuts in this game. And eventually I'll find either a Thrall or Tamiyo, or I guess another blue card, and then I can start casting cantrips. But for now, I'm good. Let's see what they do with this Ponder, because they put back 2 cards, drew 1 of them. Let's see if the combination of the card they put back, which was the worst one, because they left open the opportunity to fetch it away. The opportunity like of those 2 cards. Okay, so the 2 cards underneath were solid enough to keep. Let's draw Thrall like plant. So this is just very good display of if you know what's in your deck and what will like how much pressure is the opponent putting on us, how much time do we have, are we in a great position so we want to minimize variance like I'm doing here with not casting cantrips to make sure I have double force at all times, and then just going through, oh, I have 4 Thralls that will like break this parity, I have 4 Tamiyos that'll do the same, I have an additional Ponder or Rainstorm or whatever, so I'll just, you know, I'll just stay put. That's just very good to have a plan. So there's some blowout potential here. Let's attack for 1 first. But now I'm playing Dreadnought with double force backup. Obviously, 2 Pyroblasts are atrocious here. This will put up a very serious clock. So I'm willing to fight here. Because if I have a Dreadnought in play, oh, I'm getting Pyroblasted here. That's actually very annoying. Because now I have a tough decision. My opponent's left with 2 cards, and they just shuffled. I'm gonna fight over this. Because this just limits the amount of draw steps my opponent has. Imagine this card is left in play alone. I have no pressure. Yes, I can force the first one, but the opponent has so much time to find the second. It was a tough call because it can certainly backfire. Like if the opponent develops sneak attack here, I can easily lose after getting in for, you know. Okay, so I get a braided. I guess we take those. That was hopefully a good draw. Getting the volcanic island. But in general, the logic is here. My opponent has infinite turns to assemble something that beats the 1 force, so it's better to say you need to beat the 1 force in a few turns. Another incredible exchange for me here. Aeroblasting something they had to spend a pedal on. Very good for me. I'm hoping that happens again. So I wonder how you play with this dress down. Let's see. At the beginning of end step, sacrifice it. I'm trying to think about how this works with against sneak attack. I probably just cantrip. Yeah, pretty nice draw here. Obviously, I allowed myself to get lucky. So now I've developed a 4/4 that's going to eat my opponent's resources. I think my opponent needs to draw exactly stock up into more or less the nuts here to beat me. Otherwise, well, I guess develop sneak attack works. Like draw sneak attack, jam sneak attack, and then, you know, get lucky. But maybe that doesn't even work because I have too many permanents for, you know, Emrakul to matter. I guess Atraxa is a unbeatable card because I've already spent my 2 pyros, and all of my plows are in the side, so let's see. This land is bad. Surveil land does it again. Daze is incredible in this spot when you're pinching your opponent. Okay. I have newly found respect for the Null Drifter after this one. Guess I play the land because permanence might matter. The good thing is your Daze kind of guards me from losing to, I don't know, Ancient Tomb Sneak Attack shenanigans. And then one more hit here from the Drifter should be it. Opponent shuffles, but I actually don't think they have anything that they can shuffle for. I think it's just over. Another Thrall. Bad draw. Attack for 6. Kill an island. Keep this land, I guess. All right. Null Drifter got the job done. Very nice display of the deck here. Game 1 was amazing. That's going to be one of my favorites for a while. And yeah, let's play one more before we wrap it up. Okay, last match for today. I really like these Freestyle Fridays because it kind of allows me to play some decks that I didn't work on extensively. I don't have the sideboard plans. I didn't think about like 1,000 things when it comes to constructing the deck against the field, and I'm just having the raw experience and learning as we go. I think that's pretty cool to at least do sometimes. I just realized, is this some Sensei's Divining Top thing in the background? I have no idea. Looks cool. All right, my opponent revealed a Yorion, which is it probably makes for a pretty cool game, but I don't think it's a good sign for me. My hand is fine here. I have some stuff again, especially, with the plow against creatures. The roll would be unlocking some draws, etc. So again, we don't have what we need already, but our hand has good potential. Vile. Let's go archive. Let's base. This is just a good habit. Not necessarily relevant here. Let's just imagine you play against some blue deck and you don't know if you're getting dazed back, so you respond to this ability by dazing. That way, if the opponent dazes, you have that info before deciding on the surveil. So not going to happen this, not going to, make a difference this time, but it could in the future. So I'll definitely take this blue card. If I need to force, that's fine. Otherwise, it's also just a solid spell. Let's go archive there. Okay, so now I can, if I keep that card, I can make that my force pitch. So not that Force of Will is a good draw, but because it unlocks my brainstorm here. That's kind of the logic. Okay. So that's a land I can waste. Thoughtseize. And then hopefully no play. And then I think I'm going to try and get a little lucky here and wasteland my opponent's scrubland. Mainly because I feel like if my opponent had like Marsh Flats, they would have just fetched Swamp but played it carefully. So I don't think they necessarily had a choice. With that being said, they could obviously have more planes because that doesn't cast Thoughtseize. But I think it's a good opportunity to see if we can get lucky. Opponent takes that card, makes a lot of sense. Don't play a Vile, buddy. My opponent does not play a Vile. I draw the Force. I wasteland. Pass. So now I'm looking to buy time here. I'm hoping that the wasteland is some kind of time walk at some point of the game. It doesn't have to be right now, but can be, preventing my opponent from casting 3 drops, for example. Also, my opponent doesn't know that I paired this Force, but they, should have a suspicion. Let's say a Doorkeeper Thrall next turn, and my opponent plows it. Probably supposed to fight over it, because keeping this card in play opens up Dreadnought and the Null Drifter. So this card represents good stuff. Also, it actually Oh, maybe those bait? Or maybe my opponent just drew that card. Who knows? Another Daze. Probably very bad draw, but who knows? My opponent is probably actually going to play 3-drop into this Daze probably. So maybe it was an awesome play. Let's see. Okay, so it looks like the opponent just wanted me to waste land and they had a lot of lands. Arrakis, very annoying. Let's see if I get to Daze something like Recruiter of the Guard, etc. Doesn't look like it. Oh, because... Ah, yeah, that's bad, because they knew about the Thrall. Got it. And I'm going to play the Thrall out, which worked. So close. I don't think my opponent has any flyers here. Yeah, this is very annoying. I think I believe in that Daze. Let's see if that's my first mistake. So wait a minute. My opponent gave me the chance to go land null. No, they didn't. It would, yeah. So if they plow in response, it doesn't stay in play. Okay, got it. Yeah. My opponent is playing well here. I don't think holding up Caracas here is better than holding up Wasteland, though. But my opponent's playing very well around the... So even though they saw my hand a few turns ago, they're still playing well around Daze here, so... Good job. I think a way to win this game is to draw the land right now. I'm playing that card because the Flicker Wisp is gonna, you know, turn it into the best card in my opponent's deck. So I kind of have to do it. And then if I drew a land, I needed to tap out, right? Okay, wonder what this is. Could be no, it's not Overlord, I guess, with that fetch. Root of the Guard. I think I should, quote-unquote, counter that with my dress down. Problem is, it's coming for me next turn. Yeah, I'm just fighting a terrible battle here, because now I'm getting wasted down to 1 land. Yeah, I have to let this happen, and then I get wasted. Then I have to force a will the Flicker Wisp next turn. And my opponent has Yorion in the back pocket. Yeah, this is just too much. Because Flicker Wisp onto Recruiter is insane, and Yorion is coming, so I'm just delaying the inevitable here, I feel like. It's funny, Death and Taxes is usually very good against the decks that I like to play, like, you know, the various Daze decks of the format. But the deck will struggle in tournaments because too many different flavors of bullshit will be thrown at it, basically. I even forgot about Tamio and Caracas here, so in theory, should I have a Daze left in hand here? And use the Tamio for Force Pitch? I think that was what I was supposed to do. All right. Very, very tough matchup. Let's see. I don't like the Dazes. I like my opponent to worry about them, though, but I don't like the Dazes. I can cut a Wasteland here, I feel like. And I'm interested in these 5 cards over here. The Consigns can do some good things against this deck. Is Triumph just a random card? Maybe 2 endings is enough. Yeah, we can try 2 endings. Ending is very good against Vile. But then other than that, they have a lot of like flash creatures where the sorcery speed is kind of a liability. All right. I accept. Another hand of play Thrall, hope my deck delivers. I think I'm supposed to surveil turn 1, help me a little bit, dig for Dreadnought and Null Drifter. I hope I don't have to force early. I would rather fight over keeping the Thralls or keeping the payoff for the Thralls. I wonder what the difference between a Thrall and a Troll is. Just like the worm and the worm with O. I wondered about those things. If it's any... So obviously this is flying, and Trolls are more like big, yeah, like ugly, big nose type of creature living in a underground or whatever. I think in my language it would be the same word. All right, let's see. So Tamiyo's decent. My opponent is probably 4 Caracas deck though, but I think that's fine. So trying to think here how to play. I'm actually going to try and pass and then respond with Brainstorm if they have Plow or Caracas. Oh, wow. So if my opponent can Thoughtseize me here, that's just perfect sequencing. Well played by the opponent. Very well played. Very well played. Hats off to the opponent here, because now they may, if I respond, then I get bounced. And if they bounce first, I could have Brainstormed. So now they pick the Brainstorm and then bounce the Tamiyo, which then will complete my Force Pitch, which is not the end of the world, but it's just that my opponent played this sequence well. They could easily get crushed here. I'm not 100% sure about the basic Swamp being the fetch here, because if I draw Wasteland, I'll just kill the Caracas, right? And this card is less flexible than Scrubland. So the opponent can try and outthink themselves here, but they decided not to. That's smart. I wonder if my opponent now prefers that I have Tamiyo in play. I think that would be quite bad. Yeah, that goes into my hand. Also, they let me try and draw a new Brainstorm. Was that good? I don't think that was good. I feel like they should have just bounced it on their turn and then... Because if I draw Brainstorm, I save a mana, right? So if they bounce on their turn, I need to play Tamiyo and Brainstorm, so it's 1 mana cheaper by the way they played. Yeah, it's, I don't know. It's very minor. I think the main thing is if your opponent's just going straight to combat, you should have just killed it. Lion Sash. Sure. So that card is not necessarily anything to write home about. Still think I'm killing it because of mana usage here, so I go Plow, Thrall. Not a Null Drifter. Okay. I'm going to sandbag this land to manipulate my opponent to hopefully wasteland me here, even though I don't care about getting wasted. If I play this land out, my opponent knows I don't care about getting wasted. If I keep it, I might care about it, right? They could be thinking, I want to keep my opponent from drawing Null Drifter, exactly, right? So they fire a wasteland, delay themselves, and then my slow rolled land here will be good. My opponent does know about the other Thrall. So let's say they have 1 piece of removal, then they probably sandbag it for Dreadnought. Okay, so let's see here. Opponent has 3 mana, does not waste. Opponent has 3 mana, does not put Yorion to hand. Maybe I just get wasted on upkeep here. Roll. Draw blank. Still gonna slow roll. Maybe my opponent's just playing Ophelia end of turn, and they wanted to play around days. That would be quite solid. That's a good reason. No Ophelia end of turn. Feel like if they had Bowmaster, they should have played it, because that deck is very mana hungry. Also worth noting is that Thrall stops Solitude from plowing. Consign to Memory is, at the very least, a force pitch, and maybe can do some damage later on. Okay, the chip damage continues here. The Thrall chip damage. That's pretty funny. Here's Philia. The thing is, if I ever let that... I'm never killing it, right? Because... Let's see. I'm never killing it because of Caracas. But it's also not doing anything at the moment. I'm winning the race. So why did my opponent never put Yorion into hand these turns? What are they trying to accomplish? Maybe it's like to try and Bowmaster a snipe some cantrip, but I feel like it would just be a lot better to try and race me. Let's see. Can the opponent do anything smart? Also worth noting is Consign to Memory actually has pretty good utility against some Philia, where they bounce their own or flicker their own thing, and then end a turn we can counter the trigger that brings it back. At this point, I'm pretty sure my opponent has the first plow in hand, but they don't want to just kill one Thrall if they are losing to then a Dreadnought as a result. Also, the opponent playing this land is very bad for me, because that's a disenchant creature. Okay, so no target. Getting in for 2, totally fine. To be fair, this is the slowest clock ever, so you can take like 15 damage off of those and then just try and win. Okay. Thoughtseize. Thoughtseize here is interesting because most relevant cards that I would have played out already, right? But actually sniping Consign here can be useful. Null Drifter. Dress down. Again, it's a blue card at the very least, so... Also, by the way, now my opponent got knowledge of the land, so now I should probably play it. Let's see. I'm firmly winning the race, especially with a couple of Thoughtseizes getting cast. Flicker Wisp. That is just a 3/1 flyer. Opponent has 2 cards in hand. Do I really believe in this aggro? I think I do. This is really scrappy game. And in order for me to win this, I need these Thralls to not only be hate bears, but also get, you know, go the distance damage-wise. Opponent is now not holding up Bowmaster, so that was not the case either. Which makes this a... Oh, wow. 3 lands. Okay. Prismatic Ending. I think that card is atrocious right now, because my opponent will just bounce. My opponent could have Overlord in hand, I guess. No, they don't have Overlord, because then they would have done this, right? At the beginning, return it. And then they would have a 5/5. So if I play this card, it's like such a bad tempo play, because my opponent will just bounce it, replay it next turn. I'm actually going to wait, especially because I'm sitting on Uncracked Delta, so in theory I could kill like a better 3-drop. Let's say I had this card already, I could have just killed the Flicker Wisp and held on to force. Okay, so here's the Overlord. So that does not enter as a creature, so it actually works here, which is very annoying. Thankfully, the opponent can only bring back a 1/1. Yeah, I guess they should attack first. So Overlord is firmly racing me. If I targeted Philia last turn, I would get more hits in, I guess. Okay, opponent tapping out here so I can kill the flyer. It enters as a creature. I can kill the flyer, or... And kill the Philia. Now I'm just losing the race. I feel like I have to think about how can I actually win this game. It probably has to do with Plow. Do I believe in chip damage? Not really. I feel like the 5/5 is just burying me here. Let's see. Yeah, let's try and spike a Dreadnought. This is really bad because Null Drifter is off the table. And lots of stuff is off the table here. Now I feel like I have to kill the dog. Yeah, I don't think it's possible for me to win this game. I think it is impossible. So how could I have won this game? What I need to... So I forced some questionable cards because I believed in the chip damage. But I don't know. Yeah, I'm curious if anybody has like some good ideas here, or I was just cooked to begin with. Let's see. The opponent can bring back a recruiter, which is obviously not doing anything. But now in this spot where my opponent will get paid off for slow rolling a Plow for the entirety of this game, because now I'm blocking and the opponent kills this one, plays the recruiter, and I can't win, right? But I feel like this is a forced play because I'm not beating a Plow. It's just that my opponent's patience was awesome this game. They played very well with the Thoughtseize Caracas sequence. Can't remember if there was this game or the other. Also, I could have tried and flip my Tamir turn 1, but I was too scared of getting plowed. I wanted my opponent to act first. Alright, GG's. So that is mainly just to say that there's a bunch of small, high-level things to note that I could have done better, and my opponent did very well. Also, a little bit of your opponent shows a companion. They have 3 mana up a lot of the time. They don't use that mana. They don't put companion to hand. They just take back the turn. Like, that was very hard for me to read because it wasn't Bowmaster, it turned out. The dog didn't come down the first time, so it wasn't that. So the opponent made this very hard to read for me. So whether they did a good job camouflaging or they, you know, could have played better, who knows. But yeah, this was pretty cool. I'm very, very excited about playing these user submitted decks. So thanks to the anonymous Baron who submitted this awesome Dreadnought deck. And yeah, I hope to see you back on the channel soon for more Legacy action. Have fun playing.